Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review podcast. My continued thank you to our listeners across America and around the world. Now, today is a first for this podcast. I have two guests who created From the Runway Up. That is the very first podcast about an airport, that airport being the McGhee Tyson Airport in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they join us from today. First is Becky Huckabee. She has been with the Metropolitan Knoxville Airport Authority in Public Relations since 1997. Now she is also involved with industry-changing initiatives such as the nation's first airport podcast and other initiatives. Becky received her bachelor's in communications from East Tennessee State University and a master's in communications from the University of Tennessee. Now, if that is not enough, she is also an adjunct professor at the University of Tennessee and King University. Her partner in this is Caitlin Darris, also at the Knoxville Airport Authority Public Relations Department. Now, Caitlin handles multiple roles for both McGhee Tyson Airport as well as the downtown Allen Airport. Caitlin received her bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Tennessee and recently earned an MBA from the University of Memphis. As I said, Becky and Caitlin are hosts of the nation's very first airport-hosted podcast, From the Runway Up. Becky and Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
So tell me, what was the rationale for having a podcast about an airport, and just how is that working now?
Well, we started this as an initiative attached to an air show that our facility was doing because we knew people would be in their cars and would need some information and just want to know more about the airport in general and the types of aircraft that would be out here. And what a great way to do that in the podcast format. And it caught on really quickly. People wanted to know more about what's going on because airports are so protected these days in regards to there aren't as many tour programs or opportunities for people to get up close and personal with the aviation industry. And so we allow them to go behind the scenes of our airport through our podcast.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and we started the podcast.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We started the podcast, as Becky said, in 2016. Just centered around the air show. And so we did frequently asked questions episodes. We had some pilots that were going to be at the air show. We had them on our podcast. But now, fast forward to 2019, and our most recent episode was about aircraft maintenance. And then we've also done some episodes about airport technology. So as Becky mentioned, we highlight topics that people don't typically get to learn about and get to see firsthand.
Now, how frequently do you produce a show?
We do it every 2 weeks, and that is a change for us. We initially started the podcast as a monthly podcast and found that people were wanting more information about airports in general, and we were able to speed up the process and do it every 2 weeks, and that seems to be a good fit for our market and for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just out of curiosity and also because I'm a licensed pilot, when I saw something here about the downtown Allen Airport, I was not familiar with that, so I obviously went online to take a look-see. And that certainly reminded me of coming in, landing at some of the smaller single runway airports, and flying is very, very dear to my heart. So when I heard about this, or Caitlin asked about it, I said, fine, we just had to move forward on it. So how are people responding to this information about airports?
I think they love it. We're receiving a lot of really positive feedback, and we're also receiving some topics that people are interested in. Like, unfortunately, one of the topics that we get asked about all the time is air traffic control, and we can't really talk a lot about that, or we haven't had a guest that's willing to talk about that yet. But the majority of the topics that you see us talking about, our listeners have requested.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows us to dive deeper because a lot of communications channels that public relations professionals have in their toolbox are quick hits. A lot of people turn to social media. You got 140 characters. You're limited in a lot of ways that you can communicate a full message. And with the aviation industry, like you know, as a pilot, it can get sometimes technical and need a lot more explanation. And so we have found that the podcast really supplements things that we do in our communications efforts.
Yeah, and we found that surprisingly, people listen to us all the way through. We recently subscribed to some statistics that show us that people listen to the full 30 minutes, instead of just kind of listening to 5 minutes here and there, they listen to the full thing. So that kind of shows that people are invested in our topics and they're actually interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you had an opportunity to present this to other airports? And if so, how was it received during that presentation?
Well, we actually were asked to come and speak for one of the airport industry organizations. It was ACI. As part of Airports Council International, they have a social media summit or for unique communications outlets. Back in the summer, we went and spoke to them in Louisville, Kentucky about this podcast, and everybody was very excited because it is a new opportunity to communicate to a very interested group of people who love and want to be a part of your airport, and how to nurture that relationship and to build them into ambassadors for your program so that they are educated on topics that you hope they will be. They can go out and be your voice. So we've had a lot of opportunities, and then in January, we are going to be doing a webinar for airports as well through Airport Council International, because it was such an interesting topic from the conference standpoint that they felt like it needs to have its own platform in the national and international organization to allow people to listen in and see why a podcast could help benefit an airport's communications program.
I actually see this as and it might not be a direct outgrowth, but years ago there used to be airports had small AM transmitters or FM transmitters. I think they were AM transmitters that when you got within maybe 3 or 4 or 5 miles of the airport, you could tune to this frequency and you could get certain maybe updates about the airport weather and all of that sort of stuff. And I say that because I'm here in Nashville, and I did that for Nashville International Airport. That system, I think, has gone away for whatever reason. It doesn't seem to apply as much. So it appears that the podcast is becoming much more acceptable to airport goers.
It is, and we try to do unique things to promote the podcast. We are on Apple, we're on Google, we're on anywhere that you can subscribe to podcasts, but we actually promote our episodes inside the terminal building. So through our baggage claim ads and through video walls in the concourse, while you're sitting there waiting for your flight, we do little video promos of audio that might catch your attention, and hopefully you'll tune in and listen. So we do try to grab our travelers that are here in the terminal that might be interested in our podcast.
Mm-hmm. And I found that when we started this podcast, there weren't as many podcasts out there. Now we're finding that it's a growing field. Lots of people are starting to do podcasting because of its ease and its accessibility. And so we're now having to really think about how do we cut through the clutter to get the podcast out to the people that need it who haven't found it yet. So it's been a change since we began it to really continue to grow it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that you'll find that podcasting is really catching on. Universally, we're probably talking about hundreds of thousands of podcasts, as you said, simply because it's so easy to do. And you can actually do it with your phone if you really choose to. But and it also all depends upon what quality you want to have in producing your particular product.
Yeah, and that has been a learning curve for us. Whenever we first started, we've actually hidden all of those episodes because they sound so bad as compared to the audio quality that we have now. But we've really done some research in microphones and in our sound equipment because we want the quality to be the best for our listeners. And if you're going to listen to us for 30 minutes, we want it to sound good.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having great quality. I mean, we do the same thing on this end. I'm a former broadcaster as well, but I'm in public relations here in Nashville. And when somebody brought the idea to me, I looked into it, and, we decided, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And when you get a copy of it, you will hear the open which is actually done by a British voice actor at the open and close. I drop the music in, all that sort of good stuff, and it does help the receptivity of it and perception of the program overall.
I think so. It makes a big difference because you want it to be a reflection of the quality of work that you put out and a reflection of your facility, for us, the airport. And that level of quality can only be reached by actually being knowledgeable and going out and finding different ways to continue to upgrade and to provide a quality product.
Well, and we also don't want to invite, special guests onto our podcast and then, like you mentioned, send them the link and then it not sound as professional as we can make it. So.
Well, let me now ask how has upper management and the board for the airport, how have they received the podcast?
It's been well received. At first, it was, what's a podcast? And so we had to really educate them on the impacts of it, because when you look at what you do for all different publics, having hundreds or even thousands of people is a small amount when you're talking about a facility like ours that has over 2.2 million passengers every year. So spending a lot of time on investing in quality podcasting takes some time away from other things. And so we really had to have that discussion and education session with them on why podcasting was good in building ambassadors and building educated people about aviation in our community. And we were at a point in our area where we're growing, and it's real important to have that education level. So that was a pretty easy sell. The other is our board is really dynamic. They are communicators in their own right, and some of them are very involved in social media. So it was a natural progression for them to say, yeah, let's try this. If it doesn't work, at least we've tried it, but it is something I'm hearing about. People are doing podcasting, so we should have a voice and we should have a way of educating the public. So I think that upper management and our board, once they understood what we were trying to accomplish with it, has been extremely supportive. Most of them have been on some kind of episode through their other hat, maybe not as a board member, but maybe as the chairman who is in charge of the honor air flights that fly out of here, or our president just recorded a session with us in a year in a review about where he sees the airport going. So very supportive they have been throughout the entire process once they understood what we were trying to do with it.
Yeah, and for upper management, we have had the majority of them actually on the podcast, so that helps. Everyone really likes to talk about the department that they run here at the Airport Authority and its importance. So I think once they are guests on our podcast and they kind of get a feel for it, they all have been extremely supportive.
That was actually going to be my very next question. If you had any people of senior management as guests, and which I think is a very, very smart move to make. Just out of curiosity, have you talked to any passengers who have listened and gotten any input from them, not only as to what they think about what they have heard, or perhaps what they would like to hear?
Yes. So at the end of each episode, we ask for our subscribe. We ask them to subscribe. We ask them to rate the podcast. We ask them for our feedback. And we actually have heard through social media of some topics that they would like to hear. One of them was, as Becky mentioned, the airport is growing at an exponential rate, and so they were interested about air service. And so we had our Vice President of Air Service Development on our podcast, and where Becky and I can talk a little bit about a lot of things. Having the Vice President of Air Service really dive deeper into the reasonings behind, why we have certain gate usage, or why we don't have Southwest, or what our most common nonstop destination is. Having him answer those questions really helps explain certain things that we're trying to get out to the public, explain to them more in depth.
That brings up another interesting question, because obviously I've done work with Nashville International Airport for a number of years, and one of the things that they're continually doing, as perhaps most other airports are, is add flights to go places people want to go. And that was perhaps a little bit of what you talked about this time, but do you have maybe destinations that people would like to get to that perhaps you haven't started working on yet?
I wouldn't say that we haven't started working on. Maybe we haven't been successful in recruiting just yet, but we're trying very hard to. what we do is we monitor through consultancies. We look to see where people are going and where they're buying tickets from our region. And we see where our top destinations are. And that's what we strive for, because it has to make business sense to the airline before they're going to make an investment in your community. So start with where you know your people are going, where you can be successful in putting people on board their flights if they put them in the market. And so we also look at other ways to determine, interest in certain levels. We go out and talk with travel agents. We go out and talk to area businesses that have large travel budgets and travel departments to really get a good sense of where people want to go and what is coming down the pike that maybe could be a benefit from a business standpoint to one of the airlines that serve our market, or in the recruitment of a new airline. So they're constantly trying to keep the pulse of where people want to go from our area to be able to recruit those new flights. And we've been pretty successful lately. Allegiant Air just named us in this past year as a base of operation, which has opened up a few new destinations to us, which people are enjoying, and they've been successful. American Airlines has invested a lot in our community, and they've upsized their aircraft based on a growth in our market, and they've added additional flights into New York, into Miami. So we are seeing that happen because the economy is good and because people from our region want to fly and travel, and we are glad they are choosing McGhee Tyson Airport.
Well, and that episode that we recorded, it was unique because since we were talking about our travelers and about air service development, we chose to record the podcast out on our concourse, which was very interesting. You could hear the ambient noise of people going to get their flights, but it was also very distracting because we would see some people, running to catch their flights and things like that. So that was something different that we tried.
Out of curiosity, now that you've done this, if you've had some exposure at an airport convention, do you know of other airports that have taken up having a podcast on their own?
We do. There's actually one, I confuse it. It's either Philadelphia or Pittsburgh has started one. We had some interest in the Denver area about starting it up. A couple of people have reached out since the conference. Seattle was one that has asked a lot of questions. People have reached out. I don't know that they've actually implemented their podcast yet, but I do know that they're considering it. The one we do know for sure is from an airport up north, either Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, and they are doing it for their internal market, not necessarily for their external market. They put it out for anybody to listen to, but it's their president of the airport talking primarily to the employees and the tenants of the facility. That's kind of interesting. It sounds, that being the one in Pennsylvania sounds it sounds rather limiting. That you need to have a podcast to talk to your employees. Yeah.
But people do what they do, and the way they do it, that's pretty much up to them. And I think it's a way to put their toe in the water to see how successful it's going to be, and then it will grow from there.
Well, and we're involved in the Public Relations Society of America here in Knoxville, and we have spoken about our podcast at monthly meetings with our other PR professionals in the market, and we have had some people in our Knoxville area meet with us, talk about equipment, and they actually launched their podcast. So it's kind of cool to mentor and help other businesses, get off the ground with their podcast and say, it's not that scary, you can do it too, and then once you get the hang of it, it's fun. Well,
you're speaking to the choir here. There's no question about it. But so briefly tell the listeners exactly the equipment you're using and how you're getting it up so that they can hear it.
Yeah, so, okay, you kind of put me on the spot here, and we are not, super technical in the back end of it, but we use Blueberry to host our podcast, and that's where we post it for the world to get, I guess. And then we have a website, fromtherunwayup.com, and that is where we post all of our episodes, all of our show notes, with cool behind-the-scenes pictures and things like that. So, and we're also on social media. So we try to promote our episodes in any way that we can, really.
Oh, good. Now, have you gone on the road, let's say maybe to high schools or colleges to talk about the airport and mention the podcast and that sort of thing, just to maybe groom a different audience and encourage them, here's some career paths you can take?
Yes, we actually do that quite often, and every time we give a speech, we talk about it and promote it. We also have traveled with the podcast to different airport conferences and set up interviews with other airports that are unique. Our listeners get used to only really hearing about McGee Tyson Airport and our regional aviation initiatives. We recently interviewed people from the Tampa Airport as well as Washington, D.C. airport system to talk about what it's like to be a communications person and to work on public campaigns in communications from their perspective at much larger facilities, and how that differentiates between what we do and how it's the same. So we take this about anywhere we can take it and promote it as much as we can. And we also give out goodies if people actually know or have heard about it.
Well, and I think, I don't know the specific equipment that we use, but I think that is what is so interesting about podcasting, is it's so accessible and mobile, and you think you have to have this big, podcast room specific, for your recording, and you really don't. As you mentioned, you can do it on your phone, but we have a little recording device, and then we have headphones, which people always ask if our headphones are supposed to make us look like pilots, and that's not the case. They just are really nice headphones that makes the audio sound good. But that's what I love about it, is we have all of our equipment in a backpack, and we, recruit special guests, and we can go to them at their offices. Or as Becky mentioned, we can go, take our equipment to a conference and interview people. So that's one of the benefits of podcasting that I really enjoy.
Well, I certainly salute you guys for that. Obviously, as a podcaster, obviously the mics. I just happen to have a mixer here because I record directly through the computer I use Audacity, my audio system, where I can edit and so forth and so on, and bring in multiple different mics. But the fact is that the bottom line is that it's fun. Yes, I do have this, but I can also plug the mic into a handheld tape recorder and show up in somebody's office and record as well.
Yeah. And what I think is so interesting is we have guests on our podcast that we find interesting. And so we will learn stuff every single time we record an episode. At the end of it, we're like, wow, we had no idea. Or, we learn something new every time. And so we just hope that we can provide our listeners with that sort of wow factor about the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like at the end of ours, we have to re-record our ending all the time because we go, gosh, we learned so much. Thanks for coming. And we say that every time.
Well, that's one of the great things about having an audio editor. And Audacity is free to put on your computer, by the way, and it does wonderful stuff. So if you make a mistake, you can go in there, you can edit it, you can do a lot of different things. So if you have not seen or touched Audacity, just look it up. It has been around for years. It is it's easy to get to use, and believe me, as a podcaster, you'll find it could be very, very helpful as you continue on this journey.
Thank you.
Well, and as you mentioned, Audacity is free. I also love how there are so many computer-based apps for podcasting that are free. For example, we recently learned of the Headliner app, and it's a free tool on your computer that you use to create little promotional audio clips for your podcast. So we will get a 20-second clip, put a cool image on the back end, and then the transcript, and then that's how we promote our podcast. And it looks very fancy, but it's not, and it's free. So those are the tools that I like about podcasting. It's really easy for anybody, to take advantage of.
Well, ladies, as I said, you have provided us with a very interesting insight into something new. I guess the first of its kind is always exciting, the first airport podcast about airports. And any closing words that you'd like to pass on to our listeners?
I think it's something you should try in an industry where sometimes the tools that we have can be either overwhelming or underwhelming. Podcasting has been extremely beneficial for us, and it's something that you are the expert of your organization, and you have access to a lot of stories that you could tell, and podcasting is really a good way to do it.
And be sure to listen to our podcast.
Well, Becky Huckabee and Caitlin Darris, let me say thank you so very, very much for bringing this to our attention. We've enjoyed having you as a guest. And I'd also like to say to my listeners, continue to listen to the Public Relations Review and share this information with your colleagues as well. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.